Hello, and a warm welcome to this week's edition of the Irish Angle, our weekly discussion show about all things horse racing. And if you do like the content, please do like and subscribe to our channel. I've Emma Nagle and Johnny Ward here as usual. The normal team is back, and we've got lots to talk about. But first of all, after last week, we were talking about the ride of Kieran Shoemark in the English Guineas, and then he goes and loses his job with the Gosdens. What did you make of that, Emma? Bit of a shock.
It was, I suppose it was. Yeah, you'd have to feel sorry for him, especially after what transpired in France as well over the weekend, which we'll talk about a bit later. I think we kind of gave our views on it last week. To be honest, I don't think he did a whole pile wrong. I think it's maybe a bit knee jerk to lose your job after something like that. Like maybe there was more to it than that, and they're still going to use him going forward, but it's just going to be a best available kind of situation from now on. Look, you have to feel for him. Like it's not a great way to start the season. Again, similar to what happened in France, I don't think he did a whole pile wrong, despite being beaten close margins in both classics. And yeah, you'd have to feel for him, and hopefully he can get a bit more of a rubber of the green throughout the season going forward, because it's been a really tough start for him, I suppose.
Yeah, I was a little bit critical of his 2000 Guineas ride, but having said that, I'd speaking through my pocket there. But I never thought he'd lose his job over it. I just thought it was one of those things you bounce back and you go on the next day and win on the horse or whatever. Anyway, the bigger issue for poor old Kieran Schumacher was the 1000 Guineas in France yesterday. He wins a nose and gets disqualified. What did you make of that, Johnny?
Yeah, I don't know what the controversy was about. This is a black and white case for me, and I feel in racing we're not particularly maybe in Britain we're not quick enough to do these adjustments to results that are really based on fairness on the day. And like if you're trying to promote the breed going forward and you're trying to promote the best horses to win these top class races and then to become sires or to become top broodmares, you need to reward horses who run straight. And you have basically a runner up here who lost the race by running off. She didn't lose the race. She wasn't running in a straight line, and for me, she cost the favourite winning the race as a consequence of that. Watching the head on, and again, I'm no expert on jockeys or anything like that, but I felt Kieran Schumark did absolutely nothing wrong. Now, if you had a jockey analysing it, maybe he or she would say otherwise. But he kind of he was he's whipping the correct hand, and he kind of rousted her up a little bit, but basically it was all her doing. She veered off a true line. If the race were run in a straight line, for me the winner, the first past the post would not have been the first past the post, and she would have finished second or third. So I think the whatever you there's no exact answer, I think, to situations like this, because there's no exact rule on Sure's inquiries that is absolutely right. But for me, Kieran Schumacher, it was kind of just one of them weeks for him. Like, the Gosden situation, and one of Frankie Dettori's retirements obviously brought this around. And, it's really not a great alliance in the first place. If you've a trainer who admits freely after a race, it's a direct consequence of that one particular ride that we're essentially sacking the rider. And for me, that's not a great relationship in the first place. So from Kieran Schumacher's perspective, I think he needs to kind of learn from that, knuckle down, and realize that he's still going to get some very good rides, and don't burn bridges. As we see with riders, don't burn bridges, and put the head down and see if you can improve your riding ability. I don't think you get Field of Gold a great ride. Whereas in the Guineas here, for me, this is a straightforward case in the sense of Barcelona using his hand to slap down the horse. For me, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm watching the replay back here. If you don't have your whip, like, whips don't hurt horses. Slapping the horse on the neck frantically clearly does not hurt the horse. And he was just using the best method available for the time. I mean, I don't know what the rules are on that, but for me, there was nothing wrong with it. It made for great viewing as well, if you'd noticed the whip situation. But in terms of the demotion, I don't know what there was any. I've been involved in I remember being involved in a horse years ago that was thrown out in a controversial sort of inquiry, and you get very emotional about it, but this was black and white for me.
Yeah, I have to say that there was definite interference. Accidental, no doubt. The horse veered off a straight line. She's perfect with Kieran Schumacher, but interfered with the Aidan O'Brien filly exactly, and then in turn interferes with the favourite Zaragana. what gets me here is under French rules normally, like I've no problem with the horse being demoted. I think that was the right decision on the day, or certainly a sensible decision, whether it's right or wrong. But you could see why it's based on. It's based on fact, and there was no problem there. But what I can't understand is why they didn't put the winner behind Aidan O'Brien's filly, exactly, because she was definitely hampered as well and lost ground, lost a placing at least. Might have been a winner, possibly if she'd got a clear run through, but she was even snatched up in the finish as well, so ends up fourth rather than third. That was the one thing for me. What did you make of it, Emma?
Yeah, look, I can see what you're saying. It'd probably be harder to make the argument that exactly would have won, whereas it was kind. It's kind of one of those ones where if you were a connection of the winner or a connection of the eventual second, you'd want to come out on top of it, like it was so marginal. Again, similar to you, I think the kind of outrage around the disqualification due to the interference, I couldn't understand at all. Like there was clear interference to the eventual winner. I don't think, as I said before, I don't think Kieran Shoemark did anything wrong. He had his stick in the correct hand the whole way up the straight. He was trying to keep his filly straight, but she just drifted across and caused interference to the French filly in the end. So I don't have any issue with that. It was interesting. I was actually listening to Charlie Fellows on Nick Luck Daily just a while ago this morning, and he was saying kind of similar enough. He had no issue with the interference. He fully accepts that decision by the French stewards. I think all the three stewards on the day agreed that the Aga Khan filly was interfered with enough to say she lost the race that way. But his issue was with, as Johnny mentioned, Michael Barcelona slapping his filly down the neck after losing his stick. Look, me personally, it's kind of similar to what Johnny said. I don't think, I didn't have any issue with it personally, but it'll be interesting to see what the stewards do, because I don't think there would be kind of much rules to follow here in relation to this, because it's not something you'd see happening too often. But his case was that I think the limit in France is, 9. If you go over 9 strikes, you're getting immediately disqualified. And I think Michael Barcelona slapped her down the neck 14 times, if I'm right, definitely over the 9 anyway. So do they take those strikes as the same as you would with a stick? I'm not sure. It'll be interesting, and they definitely have grounds to appeal based on that. Like, I mean, if I was a connection of the demoted filly, I would be appealing too. But look, personally, I do think the best filly on the day came out on top in the stewards' inquiry. I'd be surprised if the form was reversed if they met again. I don't think Michael Barcelona probably covered himself in glory with the right. He was probably a little bit overconfident and ended up dropping his stick and probably panicked a little bit. So maybe he got a little bit lucky in the end. But look, I think the result is correct if you're talking about who the best filly on the day was. What they will do about the strikes using his hand will be very interesting, because it's not something you'd see happen too often.
Yeah, it was definitely excessive use of the hand anyway, if nothing else, wasn't it? I think it was 12 times he hit it in the last 100 yards with the hand, just whack, 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 whack. Anyway, we'll move on. The French 2000 guineas. Great results for Aidan O'Brien and Ballydoyle. What a week Aidan O'Brien's after having. After having no show in either of the English 1000 or 2000 guineas. In the last 7 days, he's had 17 winners all across the board. I've never seen nothing like it. They just everything. Horses that were finishing down the field last in maidens are popping up and winning at Leopardstown yesterday and everything. What about that, Johnny? He's had some run, and Henri Matisse looks a fair performer, and then the other one in there as well, Camille Pizarro, finished third from a bad draw as well. So lots to look forward to for Ballydoyle.
Yeah, I think over the last week, my horse to follow isn't even mentioned here because he only won a maiden. But you're looking over the last week: Officer Los Angeles, Mini Hawk, Lamburn, Mount Kilimanjaro, Illinois, Giselle, Puppet Master, Garden of Eden, Henri Matisse, Delacroix. All sort of stakes winners or top level winners. Dubawi, Camelot, Frankel, Australia, Sayuni, Galileo, Frankel, Camelot, Saxon Warrior, Wootton Bassett, and Dubawi. Big spread of sires there, and obviously some of them not connected with Coolmore. I'm not sure if there's any actual superstar among any of them. He won trials at Lingfield and Chester that I'm not massively sure how relevant they are in terms of the overall Derby picture. I would feel, without knowing anything inside from the yard, I would feel that his main Derby horse. We just haven't seen him yet this season, and I think Lion in Winter probably is that. But we'll see what happens. The stable form though has been really, really excellent. He was full of praise for the ride that Ryan Moore gave Henri Matisse yesterday, and I have to give a word to Wayne Lorden as well. You know, Wayne had that awful incident at the Curragh, but he's rallied very well and would have to have been very patient. And you know, you see Billy Lee picking up good rides, Ronan Whelan picking up rides for Ballydoyle now. There's an interesting spread of riders, I suppose, since Jamie Heffernan departed. But Wayne Lorden is certainly taking his opportunity. You'll get good opportunities as well in Ireland when there's very good classic racing on when there's good racing or classic racing on in France. And Wayne Lorden has definitely picked up the pieces of all of them. I wouldn't say like the most impressive performance by any Ballydoyle horse for me, as I say, was in the maiden over the last week or so. But all of the stakes winners, maybe I'm being a bit harsh here, but none of them produced a performance that really wowed me, for example. But at the same time, there's nothing, you can't pick any hole in the form that Aidan is in. And yeah, I find it very exciting, to be honest, that's in the post-Galileo world, to see how, you know, they are a kind of a go hard or go home operation with sires, and they've invested so heavily in Wootton Bassett. So it was a big weekend in that regard for Coolmore, and to see all these other horses by different sires, I find it very, very interesting. And they're not trained necessarily the same way as the Galileo breds, but I don't know what Emma made of it. I just didn't think there was any real star from all of their stakes winners at the same time.
Yeah, I thought
Yeah,
Delacroix,
no.
that was the one for me. I thought that was pretty impressive because I really liked the second as well. So there we'll talk about that later. My little horse to follow. What did you make of it, Emma?
Yeah, no, I had a great thought. Delacroix was really, really impressive. Yeah, look, it's probably fair enough to say like maybe their best classic hopes weren't out. I was really impressed by Minnie Hawk though, who won the Oaks Trial at Chester. I think did he send 4 or 5 horses to Chester, and every single one of them won. How many classic trials did he win over the weekend? I was trying to add them up. I can't remember now. I had them written down earlier, but gone off the top of my head. But basically everything he was running was winning. I thought Minnie Hawk, like, she was kind of stepping up markedly enough. Like, she was only rated 88, I think, coming into it. Stepping up in trip. I think she won her maiden over a mile, and the form of that maiden was nothing. Nothing to blow your head away either, I suppose. Won her maiden in Leopardstown last October, but she was stepping up to a mile and a half for the first time, and she just looked like a big kind of raw type of filly. And Ryan was really positive, really aggressive on her. And it's maybe look, the Chester trials maybe sometimes don't kind of go forward into the classics, but this is one, like, in recent years Aidan had Save the Last Dance won it. She went on to be second at Epsom and won the Irish Oaks subsequently, and Abel won it a few years ago as well. So I'd say Minnie Hawk is probably one you could definitely take from those. But similar to you, Vince, I thought Delacroix was really impressive. Henri Matisse winning the French Guineas. I think, maybe a couple of weeks ago people were questioning the form of the Aidan O'Brien runners, but it's kind of always the case at this time of the year. I think it's kind of the same with Willie. Like, they come out and they might get beaten first time out, but they're kind of training them as the season goes on, I suppose. And yeah, like you said, I think 22 winners in the last 21 days. I think 38% strike rate. They're really kind of hitting form just at the right time, and the flats are really starting to ramp up this week as well. A lot more fixtures, I suppose, post Punchestown, and it's getting exciting now, I suppose. I think it's only about a month to Ascot, so it's all getting exciting.
Have you got the dress and the hat sorted for that?
I have I booked the Airbnb a few weeks ago there now. I actually need to book my flights today. Haven't looked at a dress yet, but I'm sure we'll find something soon enough. Looking forward to Last year was my first year going, and I absolutely loved it. Gonna go over maybe for an extra day as well this year, so gonna make the most of it. But yeah, I think me and Johnny were talking about it. But yeah, anyone who hasn't been to Ascot, get on it. It's not that expensive either. I was looking up like Airbnbs in Windsor. I mean, you'd probably get 2 or 3 days for the price of one night in Cheltenham. It's hard to believe.
One other thing, just going back to that French 2000 Guineas, I know Aidan O'Brien used to always be on about this. I could never understand what he was talking about horses having tactical speed. But geez, Henri Matisse, I think I saw what he means now. Did you see that turning in? He goes from midfield and just cruises up into the gap to go between the front two. I thought it was immense performance there. And then, okay, he flattened out a bit in the finish. Aidan says that he doesn't do a whole lot in front. Perhaps that's true. But gosh, his tactical speed to get himself into a challenging position was awesome, I thought. So there's lots to come from him, and I also think that Camille Pizarro, which I think goes for the French Derby next, Christophe Soumillon rode that and was very pleased as well. Came from the widest stall, I think 15 or something that was drawn. Thought it was a good run, came home very strongly. Anyway, we're going to move on. A few other things, Derby related as well. There's now 72-hour declarations for the Epsom Derby. So we're going to know the runners a day before we normally would. Is that a good thing or a bad thing, Johnny?
I mean, yeah, I really don't have a strong view on it. I think it's fairly incidental. I know, but I was maybe a bit taken aback that Aidan O'Brien felt that it would be sort of against their operation, with prepping and that. Like, I still think, we have a tendency in this world to kind of look after our own circle and to kind of think, I suppose, in our own perspective. The Irish trainers voting against the 48-hour decks was one of the most stupid things I think I've ever seen. Like, they're so beneficial to so many people. And the trainers, I thought, voted in a way that was really self-serving in that. But obviously, if they didn't like 48-hour decks, you can see why 72-hour decks would be a problem. I think 48-hour, for the likes of me, and maybe I'm being selfish here, I think they're an absolute game changer. They give you so much time to prepare for things. They give connections time to prepare, and there haven't been a massive change in non-runners really. Like, you see horses being pulled out on the day, but it really hasn't changed that much for me, and I'm a massive fan. We'll talk maybe a bit about British racing's I suppose marketing drive and all that. I think it's doing this for the right reason. I think it's fairly incidental.
Yeah. What do you think, Emma? Could you see more non-runners if they're declaring 72 hours in advance? You'd have to imagine there would be some level of more non-runners in these races, and you wouldn't want to necessarily see that in a derby.
Yeah, I suppose, look, there's probably definitely a higher chance of it happening. Another day with racehorses is, more risks appearing. I don't think it's going to be an issue for most yards. Like Johnny said, like, I think Aidan O'Brien's probably going to be the most affected when he's wading through. He's 15 classic trial winners. Who's he going to put in and who he isn't? But like, you imagine, like, for the vast majority of yards who are going to have one runner in the Derby, they're going to know, weeks and months in advance if this horse is going to run. Obviously, you probably wouldn't want to be going any longer than 3 days. But look, if it does, I'm not sure how much of an impact it's going to have for marketing the Derby, to be honest. But if it does have an impact, I don't really see any harm in it, to be honest. Getting the information out there earlier for punters and race goers. Like most yards, I don't think we're going to have an issue with it. Maybe the bigger yards who have got a lot more horses to wade through and trying to make last minute decisions of who they're going to send and who they're not might slightly affect them, but I'm sure they can make that decision 24 hours earlier as well.
Yeah, they can probably declare quite a few horses instead of the ones they necessarily want to run as well. You could end up Aidan sticking in 5 or 6 and only running 2 or 3, perhaps. I don't know. We'll see what happens anyway. Another month away. Just on that same thing about British horse racing and making some changes, I see that they've a new marketing drive coming where they're going to spend 3.6 million on a new marketing campaign, basically looking to raise the profile of the sport. They're also going to use some fan footage as part of that campaign, and also looking to debunk some of the welfare concerns. What about this, Johnny? It's a lot of money, 3.6 million, but how far will it go, I suppose, in modern days spending?
Yeah, it's a lot of money. Although I suppose, like, Godolphin paid 1.9 million for a horse who was pinhooked for 90 grand there at the weekend. So when you consider that's more than half what this is spent in this entire marketing campaign. There's a lot of money in racing if you look around. And in fairness, again, it's a good initiative. Racing has a lot going for it as in terms of marketing at the moment, because it's visually quite spectacular. And if we can kind of get it right in terms of high definition drone footage, all sorts of things, racing can promote itself via social media. And Emma's way more up in this than I am, but it's not the hardest sport to promote, because it has an awful lot going for it in a visual sense, really. British race for me has been far too wrapped up in concerns about animal welfare for a long time. I don't live in Britain, and it is maybe a slightly different attitude to it over there. But I think it needs to promote. The good aspects of the sport. I think it needs to make the day at the races a fairly affordable thing to do. And I know prices are going up kind of everywhere, but I think British racing's message here is it's still a very good day out, and I would agree with that. But I feel I feel that the money needs to be well spent. And for me, and I've said this before, for me, one of the biggest marketing campaigns you could have with a view to the future is bring a load of school kids to yards, and they'll fall in love with horses and might fall in love for life, a lot of them. Simple things like that. Just, it's about the horses, about the people. Get people to see the horse up front, get them to visit yards, opening days like that. And I'm not sure how best to spend the 3.6 million, but I do hope it works out well for them. And British racing still has an awful lot going for it.
Yeah, the only thing is, you might be right there about bringing the kids to the yards, because they'd see more horses than they would have in Ludlow yesterday. Only 25 runners in the whole day. They got to do something about that at some point. That's ridiculous, isn't it? 2 and 3 runner races through the day. Emma, what about that? 3.6 million. How would you spend it?
Yeah, I've read into it briefly now. I was actually in Portugal on a Hindu all weekend, so I've been keeping track, but maybe not.
We talking about racing?
Yeah, all weekend, Johnny, all weekend. But I read a couple of articles on it. Look, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how far that money goes. It seems like a colossal amount, and it kind of wasn't it a couple of years, how many years ago, in the last 5 years, and they threw a load of money at another kind of similar marketing campaign. I think, was it Jermaine Guineas was heading that one, and I don't remember any positive coming out of that one anyway. So hopefully they'll spend the money a bit better this time. From what I've been reading, it kind of seems as if they're marketing like towards the casual race fans and looking towards new racing fans coming in as well. And kind of advertising horse racing as a great day out. That, like, I think that's fine and well, but I think to a certain degree that can only go so far. Like, if you're advertising as a great day out, you're still just going to have casual racing fans going, and as Johnny said, if you're not making the day racing any bit cheaper, like, it can be the greatest day you've ever had, but if it's costing you an awful lot of money, you're not going to be likely to go back more than a couple of times a year anyway. If you are only a casual fan. To be honest, if I was kind of it's way above my pay right now, but if I was put in charge of marketing racing in some way, like you'd make the characters front and center, the horses, the jockeys, the trainers, and maybe try and attract people in that way. And I think it's also important to not to, I suppose, disillusion the racing fans we have at the moment, because like attendances are falling at the major festivals, at some of the major festivals, not all, some of the major festivals, for various reasons. I think cost is definitely high up on the list, and if you're going to whack all this money at a marketing campaign to bring in new fans, you can bring them in, but will they stay? Because the fans we have at the moment don't seem to be too willing to go racing too often anyway. So look, hopefully it works out, but I think just from my bare reading of it, marketing racing as a great day out can only take you so far, is what I think anyway.
Yeah, a couple of quick wins for them is student days. That's what they should do. Follow the Irish tradition. Just have these student days, you pack the place out. Anyway, moving on to another thing. Johnny, you briefly mentioned it earlier. Arcana breeze ups. Cormac Farrell paid 90,000 guineas, a yearling purchase, and then sells it for 1.9 million in a breeze up. These breeze ups, they were small term stuff going back a few years ago with Gore's Bridge and this sort of stuff doing them in Ireland, but now they've become mainstream, haven't they? And all the big owners are getting involved.
Yeah, there's serious money to be made. I have to mention my tenant, actually, Adam Potts, who's been involved with Cormac, and Adam has been, like, Adam's fairly new to the game of breeze ups, but he has done incredibly well over the last 2 years. I didn't really realize the story with this horse, because he's out of a rare George Washington bred horse. I didn't realize the George Washington connection. By Night at Thunder, sometimes you get lucky, because I feel when they bought that horse last year, they didn't think they'd be able to afford him, and for some reason he just wasn't popular. On the day, so they got him for under 100 grand, and then sold him for 1.9 million. It's really incredible. What you basically need, like, it's like when you're selling a house, if you can get two kind of big egos next door, one of whom is being egged on by one wife and the other egged on by the other wife, you have to buy this house, then one of them will pay over the odds. Simple as that. And when you've Coolmore versus Godolphin, this horse is obviously very, very likely not to be worth 1.9 million after a fashion, but he looked great. And congratulations to Cormac and Adam. I was at Beyond the Pale Festival 2 years ago with them, and if you were there that day, you wouldn't think these lads were going to be the absolute geniuses that they've turned out to be. They're lads who like the crack. They're great to be around, and I'm delighted for them. This is life changing, and I just hope he pays the rent next month.
Great stuff. All right, we've nearly gone
Sorry
through
for
everything, I
falling
think.
out.
So we'll pick a horse to follow from last week. I'll start off because I have mentioned it earlier. The Derby trial with Delacroix. I was very impressed with the second. Now the winner wins really well, wins 2 3/4 lengths, but the second was Purview, which is a son of Kingman out of a Sea to Stars mare. Won in November, I think it was, in Dundalk. Well back that day, won impressively in Dundalk. But first time on grass, I thought it was a good run. Really good second. They're a long way clear of the rest. I think Purview will win plenty of races for Dermot Wells and Chris Hayes and connections. Johnny, what struck you as being the best one from last week?
The one that struck me most anyway, and my friend Robert Pollock's comment that Albert Einstein is smart after his performance on social media, haha, and so on and so forth. But Jesus, I've never seen a race where I've never seen a 2-year-old race anyway where there was such a difference. And this can be misleading because Albert Einstein was the near side. He looked like a chaser versus Evelyn Blues. He was so much bigger than him. Like I wasn't racing at days. I got worried about this horse maybe even the day before that this horse is supposed to be very, very good. And I love it's great getting, like, whatever year of it is and however life changes, great getting worried about an unraced 2-year-old because you can kind of start having a few quid on for a classic or whatever it is. Jesus Christ, he looks an absolute tank of a horse, and I'm sure a lot of the Wooden Bassets are like that, and they've, as I said, they've invested so much in him. But he's going to make that. He's going to make the whole Royal Ascot experience very interesting. Some nice 2-year-olds on the go now, and in terms of Wooden Bassett potentially he is out of a Warfront bred mare, which we'll see if that plays a factor down the line. But Jesus, he was visually so impressive, and he won kind of readily by length and a quarter. They were miles clear of everything else. Albert Einstein, I can't wait to see him next.
Good stuff. Emma, what about yourself?
Yeah, I was thinking along the same lines as Johnny, but there's so many you could pick from the last week, I suppose. But like him, like to pull, what did the first two pulled, I think 12 lengths clear of the third horse in a 6 furlong maiden. Like it was something you wouldn't see happen too often. And the second horse had a run under his belt as well. And like Johnny said, the word was kind of strong around this 2-year-old. So yeah, he could be anything. I mentioned Minnie Hawk. I think she is one you could take from those trials last week to go on and maybe kick on as the season progresses. I was quite impressed by what she did. Another one, City of Memphis, I thought was a really impressive winner in Cork last week for Paddy Toomey. She was first time out. Speaking of Breeze Up, she topped the Breeze Up sales last year by Sue Nation and Katie Walsh shoulder. And great to see her out first time for Connections. I thought she was really impressive. Showed a really smart turn of foot. So loads of exciting flat horses coming out. It feels strange. We're all given some flat horses to follow as well because it feels like the jump season just flew by. But yeah, there's plenty you could take. But I think that Albert Einstein, like Johnny said, I think his name was actually changed a few times as well from what I've seen on Twitter. So they were obviously trying to find the best name for what they're saying is the best 2-year-old in Ballydoyle. So hopefully he can kick on and go forward from here.
Great stuff. Well, thanks for all your contributions, and thanks to everyone who's watched. Do gamble responsibly if you're backing any of these horses, and we'll be back again next week for more of the same. Bye for now.